Welcome back to Double M Innovations. This video will be a continuation of the last one where I was addressing some questions and concerns people had about a video I put out last February about 3 ways I improved the wood heating in this place. This is some insulated rooms I built in the barn. It's about 350, 360 square feet that was used as living quarters while I built the house. And I just had wood heating in here. And this is the way it usually looks in the heating season. I stack a bunch of fire brick all around here to use as a thermal mass. And I still have this notorious wax pot back here that I have been experimenting with to use as a phase change thermal storage mass. One question that a couple people have asked is that they're wondering about the insurance situation. You know, has it been canceled and you're going to get it canceled and along that lines, and you know, that's a real good question. So I'm going to explain the insurance story for here in the house, and at the end of this video I had taped a clip of me taking that heat exchanger apart and cleaning it. I'll put that at the end of the video. But one thing first that I wanted to show some people that a lot of people have commented about is this dynamite box. This is just some fire starters. I don't even really use them. I seen one like this quite a few years ago when I was in Rapid City, South Dakota, helping someone move, and I don't know, I thought it was pretty cool and I bought one. I think it's kind of a conversation thing. Probably more of a guy thing, because my wife would rather have me keep it out here, but that's all that is. Insurance companies are pretty particular about wood heating. They're pretty fussy and they want everything just so before they will insure anything. When I built this barn here, I figured it's just going to live in here for a little bit until I got the house built, and then later, you know, keep it warm because there's a bathroom in here. And it's a place to get warm if I'm working out in the barn and want to get warmed up. So I just figured I'd just put a cheap, simple wood burning stove in here, one of the cheapest ones I could find. Now I put this one in, you know, I have a approved chimney, and it's just a straight up. There's even a double pipe going up to the chimney adapter. And this is UL listed. But when I went to get insurance, they said no. The reason they're saying no is because this is being used as a dwelling and there is no other primary source of heat. So there was just pretty much a flat out no. Because if it's a dwelling where you're living in, they wanted a primary source of heat that controlled the whole house, and a wood stove or a fireplace, so that's just an add-on. So since I only had just the wood stove with no other source of heat, it didn't matter if I had an approved chimney or if it was installed correctly or not. They just said no. So I just figured, well, I'm not going to put anything else in here right now. So I took the risk and just went without any insurance at all. Other parts of the country, or even a different country, might have different regulations, but I can only go by with what they were telling me for right here in northern Minnesota in the insurance company and the insurance agent that I had been talking to. So it can be different in other areas. Maybe I could have found insurance at a higher price if I wanted to just heat with wood or something, but I just kind of just said, the heck with it, I'll take the risk. So the first season I just started out using the stove with the basic, simple installation. You know, and then after a while, I wasn't real happy with the way it was working. It really took a lot of wood, and took a lot just to keep the temperature up, just so it wouldn't create creosote in here, because this is kind of a pine area, and that's pretty much all the wood I had available. So I had been working with rocket stoves before, and I figured, well, since I don't have insurance here, it's not going to matter what I try. I'll take the risk. And I set up a rocket stove in here. It's the one I had in another video. And I also set up a big thermal mass. I put up some steel shelving on this back wall. I put a layer of corrugated metal over the wall about an inch away so it wouldn't heat the wall. And I had 3 shelves, and I filled it with peat rock. You know, I had the smoke channels. I think I had probably maybe 18 feet of smoke channel. And then I have this heat reclaimer hooked up just kind of like the way it is. And I had a damper valve in the back of the rocket stove so I could just switch from the heat reclaimer into the mass. That actually worked pretty good. You know, I could have a fire maybe just an hour, hour and a half in the morning. It'd heat all the mass up and it'd radiate back out during the day. And then later at night I might have another fire in there for about an hour. And then it's off, you know, and then I keep it warm the whole night. You know, most of the time it's just off. When it came to building the house, I wanted to have some type of efficient wood heating, you know, something with a hot burn, because after you experience something with a hot burn, like a rocket stove or something, you don't want to go back. I mean, it doesn't really compare too much to just a conventional stove, like a cheap one like this. There's expensive stoves that are a lot better, but I wanted to go with something I could make, and I wanted the look of a fireplace or something like that. And the answers that I was finding was more into a masonry heater. And I worked with the insurance company to see exactly what I could have in the house so I could get full coverage on the house. I wanted full replacement coverage on the house. And they said, you know, if it's a dwelling, you have to have a primary heat source that's not wood, you know, if it's going to be inside. Outdoor wood heating, that was a different story then. But if the wood heating is going to be inside, you have to have another primary source of heat, and the wood is just an add-on. So I started asking, well, what exactly can I do? Because I said, you know, I've been places where people have a double barrel stove heating their house, or, you know, open fireplaces and stuff like that. I help build other fireplaces. You know, they're not UL approved, and none of that stuff is. None of the homemade stuff, of course, isn't UL approved. And what they told me, when they get right down to it, you need to have an approved chimney, and you need to maintain the proper clearances from anything combustible. You know, the hot parts of your wood heating has to be a certain distance from anything that's combustible. So that's how, in this area anyway, people can get by with just having just a fireplace, because they have a separate primary heating source and nothing else UL approved or anything. And that's what I have in my house now. I have hot water radiant heat, propane fired boiler, and all the tubing's under the floor, and that's the primary heat source. And the masonry heater is considered a secondary one, even if I use it quite a bit. You know, I set the thermostat for the radiant heat at a certain temperature, and then I just use the masonry heater as I go along and as I want, because if it drops down to a certain temperature in the house, the propane boiler will kick on and keep it heated. So with the insurance on the house, that's all covered. But for out here in the barn, in this area here, they still wanted a separate primary source of heat. You know, if it's going to be used as a dwelling, if you're going to be living in here, have somebody living in here or something like that. So right now I do not have full coverage on the barn. I have partial coverage on the barn from my homeowner's insurance. It'll cover part of the structure, but for like the contents and the rest of it, you know, I'm still at a risk. You know, if it burns down, I only get so much money. You know, I went through the scenarios with him of what would happen if this burned. And he said, well, you kind of lost your all your contents in here would be burned up and gone, and all the labor I put into building this would be lost, and probably get most of the material costs back. And like if the pickup's parked in here, that has a separate insurance policy, that would be covered, but you know, all the other stuff wouldn't be. So since I still didn't have insurance on here, I wanted to keep experimenting. And the rocket stove was a little bit too intense for here. I mean, it was kind of like a wood-fired nuclear reactor. I had to put a copper shroud around it with fins to try to keep that surface down, and the top was getting so hot it could get up to, you know, 1,000 degrees, just the surface of the top. So I had big metal weights and coverings over that to absorb heat. And after a while, the riser tube was starting to loosen up and fall apart a little bit. I said, well, I'm just going to probably have to take that out and rebuild it. Then after all the work I did with the masonry heater and the rocket stove, I seen what I could do with the masonry heater to really improve that with the insulated combustion chamber. And made it a little bit like a rocket stove too. It's kind of a counterflow. Exhaust goes up and it goes around and goes actually underneath the firebox and then back up around. There's lots of smoke channels and stuff, and I got other videos on that if you want to take a look. And I started thinking, with this old stove I had just, set this out there. I said, well, I bet you I could probably modify this a little bit so it burned a lot cleaner, like a little masonry heater. So, and that's what I set to do. This is the second year for this setup. This is the third setup, and it's actually working pretty good. No, I only have partial coverage on the barn, but actually this is safer than the way it was before because I can get a hotter burn, and the surfaces, like in the top and the sides and the back, are actually cooler than the way it was working in conventional mode. And most of the heat is kicked out the front. I kind of like that because that's where I want the heat, coming right out the front. And I put my heat reclaimer back on, and that works pretty good. I still would like to have a whole lot more thermal mass in here, and that's still something I'm working on, experimenting with different things. I know somebody suggested just use like a coil of tubing in there to heat water up, and yeah, I've been kind of thinking along that lines too, because I still need to probably get some heating out in my greenhouse, so I'm still doing a lot of thinking of how I want to do that. But really, that's the story of the insurance situation here. Like I said, it can be different in different parts of the country or any place in the world, it can be different. And like in this area, there's no building restrictions here, so there isn't any inspections except for electrical inspection. Or if I was going to rent this out, then everything would have to be inspected for like a renter's inspection. And then I would have to have a separate primary source of heat. And I'm still not sure I want to do that yet. So I'm getting by with this the way it is. If I was going to use this just as like a shop area or something, the insurance company was saying, well, then maybe we could just insure the wood heating. But if this is potential going to be a living area, well, then you would still need that primary source of heat other than wood. So I'll go ahead and run those video clips of me taking the heat reclaimer off and apart and cleaning it up, because some people wanted to know what kind of accumulation I was getting in there. This is the same heat reclaimer that I used on the rocket stove, so this is 4 years old, and I cleaned it out about 2 weeks ago. I haven't done it since last year. So that's the video clip I'll show. I guess I also showed the chimney on there too, so people want to know how high the chimney was. I probably got maybe 16 feet of insulated chimney pipe from the ceiling up, and then it's probably 22 feet from the top of the stove to the chimney cap. And I'll run those clips right now. A little bit of soot in there. I haven't cleaned this since last year. We'll see if we can get the camera to see in there. There's no creosote, but there is fluffy soot. This is the bottom part here. And this is the top. You can see no creosote, just fluffy soot on there. probably, I guess I could take that apart, inspect the whole pipe. This is the chimney height here I have. Gosh, it must be 12, you know, yeah, I guess maybe there's 16 feet from the ceiling up to the chimney cap. I don't know. Let the chickens out for a little bit. I put some plywood on the ground so I don't get this thing all full of dirt. So there's no really need to take it apart that I've seen, but I will just to get a good inspection of it. I don't got a whole lot of screws holding it together. Sit them on that. There. That's the garbage we got on it. I don't know if you can see that. It's that fluffy soot. I probably get this bad location. Get that soot all around. So everything looks pretty decent yet. Yeah, I don't know if you can see that. This one I built about 4 years ago, so this is four winters of use. And I think it's going to last quite a bit longer yet too. We'll try to get the garbage out of here. Yeah, it's just that light, fluffy soot that's in there. Dusty stuff. So this is all pretty good shape. And I guess nothing really else to do except put it back together. I got black dirt around here. A couple others had asked, how do I seal that heat reclaimer up and the pipes and stuff? Well, most of it is just friction fitted with the fittings fitting together tight. A lot of these fittings, these 6-inch fittings, have been used in multiple setups and different situations, and some got screw holes here and there that needed to be filled in. And what I use is this stuff right here. I just smear that around any potential leak or hole or something, and that works pretty good. Or if I needed to, I could wrap aluminum paper on the fittings if I think they're going to be leaking or something. So I think I'll bring this video to a conclusion now. The fire is out and it's ready to shut down. And thank you very much for watching, and please like and share with your friends.
If this is a trick, heads will roll. Even if this is not a trick, heads will roll.